Welcome everyone. In this short video, you're going to get some tips and pointers for how to improve your drafting and gameplay with Mage in Arena. This guide seeks to make an already decent Arena player a little bit better by offering some specific considerations. This video also assumes that you have a decent grasp of how to navigate the important elements of Arena gameplay, like understanding of value and tempo, recognizing when to trade, when to push, and playing towards your most likely outs. If these are things that you do not feel very familiar with, then working on these things is going to improve your play in Arena far more than this video. Before we get started, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to pro Arena player Keladar. Keladar has been streaming high-end Arena play for a long time. He's had incredible success with all of the classes in Arena, streams co-ops with notable competitive Arena players like Shady, Bunny, and Isherwood. He also landed a 7.23 average in the month of April, making the April Arena leaderboard on his first attempt. Be sure to check him out at twitch.tv/Keladar. He also runs a very helpful competitive Arena community through Discord and his Twitter. First up are a few tips for drafting Mage Arena in the Un'Goro Arena meta. The standard rotation, the Un'Goro expansion, and the added offering bonus to certain cards have literally changed how players should think about Arena drafts. Guiding your deck to a specific archetype of sorts is now very consistently possible, and expecting certain types of cards and synergies is now more reliable than ever. Tip number 1. With Mage, control is king. While guiding your draft to a sort of aggressive tempo style Mage is possible, and while this archetype is very strong, the package of cards and synergies that are required are less consistent and more difficult to come by. If in your early picks of your draft you seem to have a strong early curve and some early removal, then navigating the rest of your draft towards an aggressive tempo style archetype is acceptable. But the most consistent way to draft Mage Arena is to go for a control style archetype. This is sometimes referred to as Attrition Mage. With the frequency of high-value spells and removal like Meteor, as well as high-value acquisition and resource generation like Primordial Glyph, Cabal Courier, Shimmering Tempest, combined with the frequency of strong late-game minions offered by the bonus to Un'Goro cards, Control Mage is king. When in doubt, lean towards this type of draft. Tip number 2. Draft Elementals. Finding numerous and decently curving elemental synergies is now very likely in Arena, and especially in Mage. If you see an early Servant of Kalimos in your options, you can now pick this with a reliable expectation of finding activators. Elementals in Mage have incredible sustain and curve potential as well, with strong cards like Shimmering Tempest, Water Elemental, and Steam Surger in the class, and of course with the really strong Elemental offering Flame Geyser removal card, this archetype is flexible and really consistent. Tip number 3. Removal bonus. The offering bonus for really powerful removal has allowed Mage to dominate Arena. Even though Flame Strike got a 50% frequency nerf, Meteor is arguably more powerful altogether, and the addition of Primordial Glyph and Shimmering Tempest have made the acquisition of AoE altogether really consistent for Mage. On top of this, with Paladin rapidly becoming one of top tier classes of Arena, often sporting Dynasize and several copies of Spike Ridge Steed, cards like Spellbender and Polymorph, which can effectively erase or even steal minion buff effects, are more consistently finding game-winning value with Mage in Arena. Now for a few tips while piloting Mage through your Arena gameplay. Tip number 1. Find early removal. With Mage being such a strong control style class, one of the ways the game can be stolen away is with a really good early card like Vicious Fledgling. For this reason, the early mulligan priority puts even more emphasis on finding something like Frostbolt or Flame Geyser for a clear. Once the game moves into the Meteor, Glyph, Flame Strike, Firelands, and Polymorph stages, Mage really shines consistently. But getting out of these first few turns in a decent standing is essential for getting there. Tip number 2. Beware of Elemental Greed. Some players will hold off on playing Elemental cards until they see the activator. This can be devastatingly wrong. Oftentimes, playing a Servant of Kalimos, Tol'vir Stoneshaper, or Steam Surger simply for the body is really good. Don't get tunnel vision for the synergy and miss out on putting the best body you have onto the board at a decent time. Tip number 3, beware of removal greed. Again, don't get too greedy with cards like Polymorph and especially Meteor. Of course, if you are far ahead on board and can hoard these removal cards to lock out and guarantee your victory, then that's great. But if a Meteor is taking out 2 decent minions and protecting some of your own, then it's probably a solid play. Tip number 4, opponent inefficiency, health total. There are 2 things you can do in Mage to cause your opponent to play really inefficiently. The first is getting their health total to around 10 to 12 life. Having to play around a Pyroblast and a few ping lethal inflicts terrible inefficiency on your opponent's line of play. Sometimes prioritizing getting them there can steal games where you don't even have that burn to finish them. And because Mage has Babbling Book, Tempest, Courier, Glyph, and Tome, it can be a nerve-wracking experience for your opponent trying to figure out what to play around. Tip number 5, Opponent Inefficiency, Secret Management. Sometimes saving your secrets for the mid-game, rather than simply dumping them when you have 3 mana, can be a really strong idea. If turn 7 is coming up, and you're slightly ahead on board and you drop a secret, your opponent would be crazy to play into a potential mirror entity. You can predict their decision to drop some cheap minions, and this will set up better AoE effects, as well with things like Volcanic Potion, Blizzard, and Flamestrike. Cards like Entity and Counterspell sometimes aren't so powerful for the minion they acquire that the spell they deny, as much as they can be devastating to the strength of your opponent's play on curve, as they work around the mysterious secret you have developed. Arena draft tips and gameplay suggestions can spin on endlessly, and of course, all situations are unique, especially in Arena. But we hope considering some of these ideas for your Mage draft and Mage gameplay can help you improve in how you navigate your next Arena run with Jaina. Again, a special thanks to Keladar for the experience and the tips. Be sure to check out his stream if you get a chance. And be on the lookout next week as we will break down drafting and gameplay tips for Rogue in Arena. And if you have suggestions for what else you'd like to see in the subsequent breakdowns, please let us know in the comments. Thank you all for watching.